Chapter 11. Sam and Lila sat in the back room of the store waiting for Albergast to arrive, but all they heard were the sounds of Saturday night. You can tell when it's Saturday night in a town like this, Sam commented. The noises are different. Take the traffic for one thing. There's more of it, and it moves faster. That's because Saturday is the evening when the teenagers get the cars, and all that rattling and squealing you hear, that's parking. Farm families in their old jalopies coming in to see the show, hired hands in a hurry to head for the taverns. Notice the footsteps? They're different too. Hear that running? The kids are loose. Saturday's the night they stay up late, no homework. He shrugged. Of course, I suppose it's a lot more noisy in Fort Worth on any night of the week. I suppose so, Lila said. Then, Sam, why doesn't he get here? It's almost 9. Oh, you must be hungry. It isn't that, but why doesn't he come? Maybe he's tied up. Maybe he found out something important. He could at least call. He knows how worried we are. Just be patient a little while longer. I'm sick of waiting. Lila stood up, pushed back her chair. She began to pace back and forth across the narrow room. I never should have waited in the first place. I should have gone straight to the police. Wait, that's all I've heard all week long. First Mr. Lowry, then Albergast, and now you, because you're all thinking about the money, not about my sister. Nobody cares what happens to Mary, nobody but me. That's not true. You know how I feel about her. Then how can you stand it? Why don't you do something? What kind of man are you, just sitting here and handing out the crackle barrel philosophy at a time like this? She grasped her purse and pushed past him. Where are you going? Sam asked. To see the sheriff of yours, right now. It would be just as easy to call him. After all, we want to be here when Albergast shows up. If he shows up, maybe he's left town for good. If he's found something, he wouldn't have to come back. Lila's voice teetered along the hysterical edge. Sam took her arm. Sit down, he said. I'll phone the sheriff. She made no attempt to follow him as he walked out into the store. He went over to the rear counter, stood next to the cash register, and picked up the receiver. 162, please. Hello, Sheriff's Office? This is Sam Loomis, over at the hardware store. I'd like to speak to Sheriff Chambers. He's what? No, I hadn't heard anything about it. Where did you say? Fulton? When do you suppose he'll be back? I see. Oh, no, nothing wrong. I just wanted to talk to him. Look, if he gets in any time before midnight, would you ask him to call me here at the store? I'll be here all night. Yes. Thanks, I'd appreciate that. Sam hung up and walked back into the rear room. Well, what did he say? He wasn't there. Sam reported the conversation, watching her face as he spoke. Seems somebody robbed the bank over at Fulton around supper time this evening. Chambers and the whole State Highway Patrol gang are out seeking and setting up roadblocks. That's what all the excitement's about. I talked to old Peterson. He's the only one left in the sheriff's office. There's 2 cops walking the beat here in town, but they wouldn't be any use to us. So now what are you going to do? Why, wait, of course. Chances are we won't be talking to the sheriff until tomorrow morning. But don't you ever care what happens to? Of course I care. He cut it out on her sharply, deliberately. Would it ease your mind if I called the motel and found out what's holding Albergast up? She nodded. Again he went back into the store. This time she accompanied him and stood waiting while he asked the operator for information. She finally located the name, Norman Bates, and found the number. Sam waited while she put the call through. Funny, he said, hanging up. Nobody answers. Then I'm going out there. No, you're not. He put his hand on her shoulder. I'm going out. You wait right here in case Albergast comes in. Sam, what did you think happened? I'll tell you when I get back. Now just relax. It should have taken me more than 3/4 of an hour. And it didn't because Sam drove fast. In exactly 42 minutes, he unlocked the front door, came into the store again. Lila was waiting for him. Well, she asked. Funny, the place was closed up. No lights in the office, no lights in the house behind the motel. I went up there and I banged on the door for 5 minutes straight and nothing happened. The garage next to the house was open and empty. Looks like this Bates went away for the evening. Well, what about Mr. Albergast? Well, his car wasn't there, just two parked down at the motel. I looked at the licenses, Alabama and Illinois. But where could... The way I figured it, Sam said, is that Albergast did find out something, maybe something important, and it could be that he and Bates both went off together, and that's why we haven't gotten any word. Sam, I can't take much more of this. I got to know. You got to eat, too. He displayed a bulging paper bag, stopped in at a drive-in on the way back, and brought us up 2 hamburgers and coffee. Let's take the stuff into the back room. By the time they finished eating, it was almost 11 o'clock. Look, Sam said, why don't you go back to the hotel and get some rest? If anybody calls or comes in, I'll phone you. No sense in us both sitting around like this. But, come on, worrying isn't going to help. Chances are I figured it right. Albergast has located Mary and will get news by morning. Good news. But there was no good news on Sunday morning. By 9 o'clock, Lila was rattling the front door of the hardware store. Hear anything? She asked, and when Sam shook his head, she frowned. Well, I found out something. Albergast checked out over at the hotel yesterday morning, before he even started to look around. Sam didn't say anything. He picked up his hat and walked out to the store with her. The streets of Fairvale were empty on Sunday morning. The courthouse was set back in the square on Main Street, surrounded by a lawn on all 4 sides. One side contained a statue of a Civil War veteran, the kind cast up by thousand-backs in the 80s to accompany and occupy courthouse lawns all over the county. The other 3 sides displayed respectively a Spanish-American War trench mortar, a World War I cannon, and a granite shaft bearing the names of 14 Fairville citizens who died in World War I. Benches lined the sidewalks all around the square, but they were vacant at this hour. The courthouse itself was closed, but the sheriff's office was over in the annex. Fairville citizens still spoke of it as the new annex, though it had been added back in 1946. The side door was open. They entered, climbed the stairs, walked down the hall to the office. Old Peterson was doing duty at the outer desk all alone. Morning, Sam. Good morning, Mr. Peterson. Sheriff around? Nope. Hear about them bank robbers? Busted right through the roadblock down at Parnassus. FBI's after him now. Send an alert. Where is he? Well, he got up pretty late last night, early this morning, I should say. Did you give him my message? The old man hesitated. I guess I forgot. All this excitement around here. He wiped his mouth. Of course, I intended to, today when he comes in. Well, what time will he be here? Right after lunch, I guess. Sunday morning he's over at the church. Well, what church? First Baptist. Well, thanks. You want to go pulling him out of church? Sam turned away without answering. Lila's high heels clattered hollowly behind him on the hall. What kind of a hick town is this anyway, she murmured. A bank is held up and the sheriff's in church. What's he doing, praying that somebody will catch the robbers for him? Sam didn't answer. When they reached the street, she turned to him again. Where are we going now? First Baptist Church, of course. But it turned out they didn't have to interrupt Sheriff Chambers at his devotions. As it turned down the side street, it was apparent that his service had just ended. People were beginning to emerge from the steepled structure. There he is, Sam muttered. Come on. He led her over to a couple who stood near the curbing. The woman was short, gray-haired nonentity in a mail-order print dress. The man was tall, broad across the shoulders, and paunchily protruding at the waistline. He wore a blue serge suit, and his red-seamed neck twisted in rebel ion against the restraint of a white starch collar. He had curling grayish hair and curly black eyebrows. "Hold on a minute, Sheriff," said Sam. "I'd like to talk to you." "Oh, Sam Lewis, how are you doing today?" Sheriff Chambers held out a large red hand. "Ma, you know Sam here? I'd like you to meet Lila Crane. Miss Crane is visiting here from Fort Worth." "Well, pleased to meet ya. Say, you aren't the old Sam keeping talking about, are ya? Never let on you were so pretty." "It's my sister you're thinking of," Lila told him. "That's why we're here to see you. I wonder if you could go over to your office for a minute," Sam broke in. "Then we can explain the situation." "Well, sure, why not?" Judge Chambers turned to his wife. "Ma, why don't you take the car and go along home? I'll be over for a little while. Soon I'm finished with these folks." But it wasn't a little while. Once settled in Sheriff Chambers' office, Sam told his story. even without interruptions, and it took a good 20 minutes. And the sheriff interrupted frequently. "Now let me get this straight here," he said at the conclusion. "This fellow Holt came to you, this Albergas. Why didn't he check with me?" "I already explained that. He was hoping to avoid going to the authorities. His idea was to try to find Miss Crane and recover the money without any embarrassment to the Lowry agency." "You say he showed you his credentials?" "Yes," Lila nodded. "He was a licensed investigator for the insurance firm, and he managed to trace my sister all the way up here to the motel. That's why we're so worried now, because he never came back the way he said he would. But he wasn't at the motel when you drove out there." The question was addressed to Sam, and he answered it. "There was nobody out there, Sheriff." "Well, that's funny. Damn funny. I know this fellow Bates who runs it. He's always there. Scarcely ever leaves for an hour to come into town." "You tried calling him this morning? Why don't you let me do that now?" "Probably turned out he was sound asleep and when you got there last night." The big red hand picked up the phone. "Don't tell him anything about the money," Sam said. "Just ask for Albergas and see what he says." Sheriff Chambers nodded. "Leave it to me," he murmured. "I know how to handle this." He put through the call and then waited. "Hello? Bates? That you?" "This is Sheriff Chambers." "Oh, that's right. I'm just looking for a little information. Party here in town is trying to locate a fellow named Albergast, a Milton Albergast from Fort Worth. He's a special investigator or something for a firm called Ed Priority Mutual, I think it is." "He's what?" "Oh, he did. When was that?" "I see." "Well, what did he have to say?" "No, it's all right. You can tell me." "I already know all about it, yeah." "What's that again?" Yeah. "And then he left, Did he say where he was going?" "Oh, you think so?" "Sure." "No, that's all. No, there's no trouble. Just that I thought he might check in here. Say, while I've got you, you don't think he might have stopped back later on in the evening, do ya?" "What time do you generally go to bed out there?" "Oh, I see. Well, I guess that just covers it. Thanks for the information, Bates." He hung up and swiveled around to face them. "Looks like your man headed for Chicago," he said. "Chicago?" Sheriff Chambers nodded. "Sure, that's where the girl said she was going. Your friend Albergas sounds like a pretty smooth operator to me." "What do you mean? What did that man Bates tell you just now?" Lila leaned forward. "The same thing Albergas told you yesterday evening when he called in from there. Your sister stayed at the motel last Saturday, but she didn't register under her own name. She called herself Jane Wilson. Said she was from San Antonio. Let it slip that she was on her way to Chicago." "It could have been Mary then." "Why, she doesn't know anyone in Chicago. She'd never been there in her life." Well, according to Bates, Albergas was certain that that was the girl. Even checking her handwriting, her description, the car, everything fitted. Not only that, once he heard about Chicago, Bates said he took off from there like a bat out of hell. Well, but that's ridiculous. She had a weak start. If she was going there at all, that is, and he never find her in Chicago, maybe he knew where to look. Maybe he didn't tell you to all he found about your sister and her plans. What else could he know that we don't? Never can tell about these smart operators. Could be he had some idea of just what your sister was up to. If he could get to her and lay his hands on that money, he might not be so interested in reporting back to the company again. Are you trying to say that Mr. Albergast was a crook? All I'm saying is that $40,000 in cash is a lot of money, and if Albergast didn't show up here again, it might mean he has something figured out. The sheriff nodded. Must have been working the angles all along, the way it looks to me. Else why would he at least stop in here beforehand and see if he could help? You say he already checked out of the hotel yesterday? Now wait a minute, Sheriff. Sam said, "You're jumping to conclusions. You got nothing to go on except what this man Bates said over the phone just now. Couldn't he be lying?" Well, why should he lie? He told a straight story, said the girl had been there, said Albergast was there. Where was he last night when I came then? Fast asleep in bed, just like I thought, the sheriff answered. Look here, I know this fellow Bates. He's kind of an odd one in his way, not too bright, or at least that's how he always struck me. But he certainly isn't the type who would ever pull any fast ones. Well, why shouldn't I believe him, particularly when I know your friend Albergast was lying? Lying? About what? You told me when he called you at the motel last night. Well, that was just a stall. He must have already found out about Chicago, and he wanted to keep you quiet long enough for him to get a good start ahead. That's why he lied. Wait, I don't understand, Sheriff. Just what did he lie about? Why, when he said he was going up to see Norman Bates' mother. Norman Bates has no mother. Wait, he hasn't got a mother? Not for the last 20 years, he hasn't. She's dead, Sheriff Chambers nodded. Quite a scandal around these parts. Surprised you don't remember it, but you were only a kid then. She built this hotel with a fellow named Constantine. Joe Constantine. She was a widow, understand, and the talk was that she and Constantine, well, they were. The sheriff stared at Lila, then broke off with an aimless wave of the hand. Anyway, they never did get married. Something must have went wrong. Maybe she was in a family way, or maybe Constantine had a wife back where he came from. But one night they both took strychnine together. Regular poison pack, you might say. Her son, this Norman Bates, he found them both. Guess it was pretty much of a shock. Way I remember it, he was laid up in the hospital for a couple of months after. Didn't even go to the funeral. But I went. That's how I'm sure his mother is dead. Hell, I was one of the pallbearers.